King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream. Dr. King had a dream. I am the dream.
I'd like to start off with the introductions of everybody that's here. And let's start off with Barack. I see you next to me on this little grid.
Hey everyone, my name is Barack, and I am an Egyptian American organizer, abolitionist, and activist from Portland. I am the program director for the Peacekeeper Society, that is a Indigenous run and led nonprofit that focuses on mutual aid, as well as mobilizing tribal trainers and wisdom keepers to pass on traditions to the next generation. I'm also a voting member for the Portland State University Cultural Resource Advisory Council. I sit on the Hand to Mouth Theater, nonprofit theater board, and I'm a longtime volunteer with Don't Shoot Portland. And yeah, it's very honored to be here.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. And then we'll go with Corey.
Hi, everyone. I'm Corey. I'm a visual artist, graphic designer, and high school senior based in Chicago, Illinois. And I also do work on the Chicago Public Schools Student Advisory Council.
Thank you. I think I'm gonna leave mine on unmute so that I don't keep messing y'all up. Thank you, Corey. I appreciate that. Now we'll go to Jacinda.
Hi, everyone. I am Jacinda, and I use they, them pronouns. I am a Latino organizer in Portland, Oregon. I have been organizing on Teresa's previous mayoral campaign, and I'll have my 2-year mark here in October. And now I am a volunteer for Don't Shoot Portland, supporting mutual aid programs, as well as a national storyteller lead for Planned Parenthood National Federation of America. Thank you so much for having me here, Teresa. And yeah, I'm really excited to talk again with you all about mutual aid.
Thank you. And Tiana?
Okay, so hello. My name is Tiana Arada. I am a student, an organizer, an activist, an abolitionist. I started my activism about 5 years ago in Portland with Don't Shoot PDX. I am also currently dealing with the repercussions of being an organizer, as I'm being charged with 13 misdemeanors after the conclusion of a peaceful protest from last year in July. And so if you want to follow anything with that, you could go to freetiana.com or the Free Tiana Coalition and look up for updates. As it's a process, I do expect to go to trial. And yeah, that's it. We'll get into it more later.
Thank you, Tiana. Joseph?
Hi, I'm Joseph Blake. I'm born and raised here in Portland, Oregon, in Northeast. I'm a local photographer, videographer, and documenter. I'm currently in school to become a teacher, and yeah, I'm excited to be on this panel as well.
Righteous. And Ariana, will you tell us about yourself?
Hi, my name is Ariana. I'm Miss Black Teen Oregon International Ambassador. I got into activism when I was 12, and I remember the first protest I went to was organized by Don't Shoot, and that's when I really found my voice, and that's what encouraged me to speak up and know more about Black history and what I wasn't learning in schools. Within my platform as an international ambassador, my platform is sexual misrepresentation, so I spread knowledge to women about being confident in themselves and not letting the media portray them how the media wants to portray Black women, all women, you know? And I think that's really important that women know this, because I know that I used to struggle with, you know, insecurity and, you know, like, why don't I look like this girl, or why does she look like that and I don't? So I think it's really important for women, especially Black women, to know that they are beautiful and that they deserve respect. And yeah.
I love that. And Danny, let's hear about you and what you got going on.
I am Danny. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the youth coordinator with Total Recall Pack and currently organizing with PDX Queer Front. Yeah.
Thank you. And L'Oreal, do you want to share information about the work that you do and who you are? Thank you for being here.
Sure, of course. I'm L'Oreal Aviles. I go by Lo. I use they and he pronouns. I'm an interpreter with Fingers Crossed Interpreting, here to provide access.
Thank you so much. And Andrew, I see you popped on. How are you? Please give us your spiel.
Good to see you. My name's Andrew Tolman. They, them pronouns. I'm the founder and lead interpreter for Fingers Crossed Interpreting. Thank you for having us and making this accessible today.
Oh, thank you for being here. And thank you for always being here.
Hi, everybody. My name is Samuel. I use he, him pronouns. I am a visual artist and musician and community organizer, born and raised in Portland. I work a lot and sit on boards with different artist coalitions advocating for a change in the status quo for sustainable infrastructure here for artists. I work a lot within the houses community, building community out there and providing art and music resources, and just happy to be here and in conversation and excited to figure out ways as an artist and as a community member to change the hegemonic structure and figure out a new future.
So to me, I guess mutual aid is something that I've always related to community, just how people can take care of one another, more than just getting each other back or helping out when you can. It's literally redistributing your wealth and resources to help each other and rely on one another. And I really learned the meaning of that when COVID struck last year, because there were so many people who were without, so many people who couldn't go to grocery stores, a lot of confusion in general about like where you could go or, you know, what you could do. So I remember it was really scary for that first like couple months where people, like the traffic was gone. It was a ghost town, you know, like people were staying in their homes. Like I remember we were scared to get like packages and stuff because we're like, I read somewhere that you're supposed to open it outside, not let the cardboard in your house. Like it was like really scary. No one knew what was going on. So, you know, and immediately Teresa wanted to implement like a mobilization system where we could reach out to people who needed those resources, like elders, high risk folks who were just like in their homes, unable to even do grocery delivery, you know, services. Sometimes they don't even come like directly to your door. It's just, you know.
And it wasn't happening yet, not like it is now.
Yeah, it took a long time for people to catch up. And I feel like communities immediately started taking care of each other. We also saw like the PDX fridges, PDX free fridges. That's a project that I really support and love, because it's just maintained by the community for the community. You take what you need and leave what you don't. And I remember there's only a couple of them, and then they just spread over the summer and people are frequenting them, you know, just being able to have basic necessities like food, fresh masks, PPE, hand sanitizer, toilet paper, paper towels, like food, you know, that was a really big deal. And then this summer, like that was more in the early stages of COVID. And then towards the summer, we expanded that mutual aid to include like what Barack was talking about yesterday, mutual aid to Indigenous reservations and communities. A lot of folks weren't getting assistance at that time, even more so than like people that lived in the city, even though there were like very strict resources. There were scarcely any out there, and COVID numbers were just like out of control. So the main issue was like bringing fresh, clean water down there. That expanded into a whole other thing as we met more people who were doing that work already. And yeah, I feel like now everyone is starting to realize mutual aid is all around us, and we all partake in mutual aid without even thinking about it. Yeah. You know, that's just how we take care of each other.
Because even like the link tree, we had the link tree and it had like information about the lawsuits. It had information about GoFundMe's. It had jail support on there. It even had downloads for art. And to me, that was another form of mutual aid, because as communities were organizing, they were able to use those different files and images and documents to kind of share. And like, even if somebody got arrested in like New York, we were able to help. If someone lost their kid at a protest in Los Angeles, we were able to help because we had the foundation of that social outreach through our social media and the use of hashtags. So kind of like how people see mutual aid, for me, it's a bigger, broader thing. It's like whoever shows up in whatever capacity you show up in, that could be determined as a form of mutual aid. In my opinion, like we spent maybe $100,000 on legal fees last year to pull lawsuits together. To me, that was resource for mutual aid. We were providing mutual aid to communities because people were like, y'all not even down there. It was like, nah, but someone has to stop the stuff that's happening to people that are out there. And so that was a form of mutual aid, if you ask me. So yeah, I'm very excited to hear from y'all. And like yesterday I called on people. This time we can use the reaction hand if y'all want, or I can just call on people. But yeah, if anyone's interested in telling me like how you see mutual aid, how you participate in mutual aid and what that means to you, this is that conversation. And I think it's time to kind of inspire people about, what they can do. Y'all want me to call on y'all again? We'll go to Barack. Thank you, Barack.
Raise a little hand.
Yeah, sorry, my dog was just freaking out and the neighbor's like building a fence, so it's a little loud. But yeah, for me, mutual aid is like so much more than just an organizing theory. It's just like the concept that we can take care of each other and we don't need, one, to ask for permission, and two, to ask the government for permission. Like as we saw, during the pandemic and even before, marginalized communities have always been helping each other. And mutual aid for me is something that's just always based on, one, like mutual respect and mutual reciprocity. And we've been doing mutual aid as humans as long as time, like whether it's, sharing the fire thousands of years ago, or, trading resources to make sure that you're warm and I'm fed, or you've got water and I've got shelter. And so that's just something that's been instilled in me my whole life. Like my mother was born in a refugee camp, and she had, 8 brothers and sisters and their parents, and they lived in a tent and they had to take care of each other because there was no other option. And so that was instilled in me at an early age. And even when my mom immigrated to the United States and was working full time, she was always helping out our neighbors, whether it was bringing meals or bread or clothes when kids needed it. And so I saw that as a kid and just thought it was like normal. Like that's just what we do, is take care of each other. And I got a little older and saw that that wasn't always the case, especially in like predominantly white communities, where there's this very like capitalist, pull yourself up by your bootstraps ethos that gets pushed on us from a young age, where it's like, once you're 18, you got to go, be on your own, make a name for yourself, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And that's just like a complete capitalist myth. Because no one ever did anything on their own. We all, like a lot of those folks have a lot of privilege, but how we can combat that is by coming together and like building these really strong community ties, where you just, you start that mutual aid relationship by just walking up to someone who looks like they need help and asking, do you need help? How can I help? What do you need? Which is so different than just showing up somewhere with a bunch of, medicine or food and being like, take this is what you need, and telling a community what they need. And so for me, that's the big difference, is really building those relationships where you're working together. You're not working for them. They're not working for you. Nothing is expected from either side. And the end goal is that everyone's taken care of.
I think going back to like what Barack was saying, I think a lot of times we come into a community and think, oh, this is what they need. Or a lot of times we come in with biases. And when I like started noticing with like organizing, a lot of times we have like a savior complex of this is what we need, and we know what a community needs more than themselves. And I noticed when I started organizing, a lot of times we think, oh, just need clothes or money. But building a community and having support is so crucial. And also having a community that people can rely on is very crucial too. And I think people really need to be able to have a community.
Yeah, I think my relationship with mutual aid kind of comes from being here in Chicago. Every so often we see these big calls for fundraising for big corporations and nationwide causes. And I'm like, hey, like we live in Chicago, Illinois. If you're looking for someone to help or a cause to support, there's thousands and millions like just down the street. And so I see people fundraising for these big for-profit organizations and corporations, and I can go down the street and see families that need winter coats or schools that need textbooks. And so I think I really try to champion for direct aid, and that came for me last year and last summer, especially getting into realizing that I could use my art as a way to do that, and came from whether it's a commission, a portrait, or creating clothing that I can use to fundraise for specific causes and for specific people, rather than having people aimlessly looking for causes to support or things to just throw money at. We can have direct funnels, or and it doesn't even have to be monetary. People can go support communities and support people without opening their wallet, because a lot of people want to support without having the funds to do so. And so whether it's just being a community for people, childcare, like taking care of your neighbor's kids when they can't, or when you have too many clothes and you don't know what to do with them, like there's so many options for that. And I think people wait for those Instagram infographics to tell them what to do, when there's like so many options that you can just look to open your eyes and you can see who needs your help and how to do so.
Yeah, I would like to just echo on, I think, what everybody said so far, and what Brock rooted and centered the conversation in, which is noticing that it's always been in existence and always knowing that it needs to happen within community. I think with art specifically, just focusing on art, you know, what that's looked like in the last couple of years has just been showing up for community and providing resources and support, whether that's building structures for youth to paint on, or whether it's showing up with materials or just supporting efforts. I think it really ties into that aspect of community. And like with Portland especially, outside of on the screens, really building those relationships within the community and looking around, what Danny was saying, just looking around and being able to see that there's immediate need everywhere, especially in a city like Portland, and showing up and being willing, if that space and energy exists, to build those relationships, especially with people living outside. That's a big part of the work that I do behind the scenes. And that comes from just going and connecting with people, specifically with art and music as a tool, you know, because there's so many stories out there that are told, and especially with art and that medium, like individualism has been super codified and romanticized and as this idea, and it's almost collected, like created this idea of like selective humanism, which means that it's just certain people get to be, you know, leveraged within this, you know, system that we're talking about, the systems of oppression. And I think that it's essential within that unity aspect and community in Portland, especially, to just see all those spaces and show up if you have the resources whenever and wherever when it's at, because there's so many people doing incredible work in this city. So just like showing up with, you know, as artists, if there's any artists watching, to just really make sure to use those paintbrushes and the musical notes whenever possible in community. And it looks like different things, and it's looked like a lot of different things for me over the last year, especially within the movement in Portland. And it started with like, you know, recognizing there was a need to amplify voices. So we set up sound systems and made sure that there was a list put together. And then all of a sudden there was a community that came through that was like, we're gonna take this from here and we'll make sure there's sound systems everywhere. And that led into like logistics and support for things that happened on Signal, which maybe not to get to talk about, but to make sure that there's things happening in the city surrounding a lot of the protests. And like I said earlier, you know, just supporting in that community and organizing with other artists to make sure that needs were being met for the people that are out on the front lines and doing the work.
Yeah, and the key thing that you said was amplifying voices, using the art to kind of amplify voices. What I noticed is that like when we talk about like the art that happened downtown, a lot of families who feel like their loved ones had been forgotten when we talk about justice or seeking justice, they were able to kind of like have a repronouncement of their efforts through those art exhibits, right? People were using names, they were using images of people that had been lost locally, and in conjunction with what had happened to George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor and, you know, Elijah McClain and all these different people. We had the Deontays, we had Carlos Hunter, you know, we had Jason Washington, we had those local families be able to have that visual art that was being produced and promoted nationally, right, you know, at that point in real time, reconnect their efforts for social change, and seeking justice. And then also I wanted to make a point that, you know, our ASL interpreter is also an artist, right? It does, you know, performances and has albums out. And when we had that additional access to communication, that helped us break down boundaries where people felt like their community was not involved or was not a participant in the work. Might just be an arrangement for the word inclusivity or, you know, inclusion. But no, we absolutely depend on you to be here and we can't move without you. I think that that was a very strong component to when we talk about amplifying voices, because it let other people in our disability communities know that, hey, we're going to find ways to include you in this movement and we want you on the front line. And so whatever capacity you're bringing it, that's mutual aid that we can count on. But now it's becoming a part to where our mutual aid consideration and how we set up our production for our programming or our protests, we're including it as an essential device, right? It starts off as mutual aid, but then we realize that it is essential, as mutual aid usually is. So thank you for bringing in the amplifying the voices and the art as a mutual aid aspect, because those things matter. Joseph, will you talk to us about how you view mutual aid and how you participate or see that?
Yeah, so I view mutual aid as like the backbone of the movement. It's something that we kind of like often overlook, but without it, a lot of us would not be able to be on the front lines. And I mean that by saying, when I was downtown, for example, and I got tear gas for the first time, and like I was blinded, I couldn't see, I couldn't do anything, and like all of a sudden I had people surrounding me, like helping me out, sitting me down, pouring liquid in my eyes to clear it out, make sure I was all right. And without them being there, I don't know what would have happened in that moment. And so I often look at that as a bigger picture, seeing that the mutual aid came to help me out. And so I could allow me to be there every day and help out and capture these moments and just be a part of the movement. And without the mutual aid in those movements, I wouldn't have even been able to just like continue. And so what that looks like to me is like, it's a bigger picture. Like I got the chance to visit Chaz in Seattle, and I saw how it was set up there. It's about like 2 blocks blocked off, a no cop zone. And throughout there, I got to walk around. I got to see they had booths set up. They had queer resources. They had libraries. They had a barbershop. They had food set up. They had everything you could possibly need in that area. And so nobody was left out. It was an all community effort to bring together, to raise awareness, to let people be heard. It was a beautiful sight to see. And I got to see a little bit of that in Portland as well. And it all came together, and without mutual aid, none of the things would be possible at all. So it's very important to me, and it's something that I live with daily.
So it was actually interesting. Like the first time I had heard the term mutual aid was sometime in the last year. But then when I like took 2 minutes to Google it, I was like, wait, like we've been practicing, like this is nothing new. And so, I mean, I think I really see it as taking care of your own communities, and there is such a great value. You are eliminating the oppressor, because you're not asking for resources from the government in any capacity. I think actually like one of the most amazing acts of mutual aid I saw was this last summer. My friend, she's a young mother. She had her car totaled because she was in an accident, and she was part of our little activist community in SLO. We just called ourselves like Black and Brown Youth. We were just hella unofficial, but like the school garden club and random members of the community, and like people did bake sales, like they fundraised enough to actually get her a new car that was just as reliable as her old transportation. And it was so important to give like a 20-year-old single Black mother the resources that she needs. And so I don't know, I see like But also mutual aid doesn't have to be something that's also that dramatic. Like mutual aid is community fridges. It is dropping your Venmo or sending something to somebody's Venmo, being like, oh, I have a little extra money this week. Like I saw that you had to go through this. Like I'm gonna help you out. And maybe if you don't need it, you can redistribute it. Or people who like collect and distribute like care packages. It's so expansive. And even recently, like I was sleeping on a bed, or not on a bed. I was sleeping on the floor for like 2 months. And I posted to my story. I was like, hey, like I don't know if y'all got it, but if anybody would like to help me out, like I have been sleeping on the floor for 2 months. I would like to buy a bed. Like it was just a whole bunch. And then a few members of the community like rallied and ended up helping me pay for that, which is such like a basic need that just made me just feel so much more stable in life. And so yeah, mutual aid is just taking care of each other. It's like it's buying somebody else groceries is everything.
Mutual aid has helped me so much, and it's like not having to. It's like when at the beginning of the pandemic, I had to depend on myself to do everything for me, and it like took a toll on my mental health. It took a toll on everything, and I'm graduating early, so my schoolwork has been like just more and more and more and more. And the most mutual aid that I love the most is when I get care packages, because like it's just so comforting to know that people actually care and want your mental health to be good, and to be able to know that we have those resources, and to know that like my pageant GoFundMe, I have like $7,000 in there, and that's all because of mutual aid and people stepping in and supporting Black women. Like my trip to Kentucky was funded by mutual aid, and I'm so grateful to have such a great community to do that. Even though there's like a lot of drama every now and then, it still comes down to like being there for each other and having different resources and not having to depend on the government for anything.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm pretty much going to just build off what everybody else was talking about. But I really think mutual aid is right. The systems that our oppressors have set up for us continue to oppress us. You know, there's SNAP benefits that are supposed to help people, but for somebody like me, when I first applied, I was given $16 for the month. That's it, $16. How is that supposed to help myself and my partner who are unemployed right now? So I think that this mutual aid is a way to replace those systems that continue to oppress us, and a really great model and a way to move forward. I think a really big part of mutual aid as well is joy. Joy is so important and keeps us stronger, and it builds us up and allows us to care for ourselves. And when we go out there and we're actually asking folks, what do you need, rather than just, like you said, Teresa, just, our oppressors going and handing people things that they might not even be able to carry, right? And us asking folks, hey, do you need new t-shirts and whatnot? And also reminding ourselves that there are sweeps happening all the time, and calling ourselves to action after those sweeps, and ensuring folks get their belongings back, or we're able to support them and bring back other belongings to them. And I think that it's really important for us to keep evolving. Danny talked about asking folks what they actually need, as well as Barack. And I think that brings a lot of joy, as well as, I forget where I was going with that one, but I think it's really important for our work to constantly be evolving, which is something I touched on yesterday. As we learn stories of more folks, I'll go back to my SNAP issue, $16. A lot of folks don't know that that's what happens to people every month, but we have programs like free fridges or grocery block PDX who without charge will just go and deliver your groceries rather than, having to go through Instacart, which you might not have access to Wi-Fi or any other resources like that. I think that it's really important to remember that joy matters, but it is also a byproduct of mutual aid. Putting our resources into things like not Black Friday, which I was so thankful to be a part of, and seeing folks who live so far away, and don't have the same kind of like system that we have set up here. And we can do call to action every day and people will show up. When I was working on the writing campaign, over just a few weeks, I had over 400 volunteers signed up by election day. And what I did with that was connected those folks through a large volunteer group chat. And now those people are still using those group chats to keep in contact, starting their own group chats from that, because we created this incredible community of people who actually care and actually wanted to create change through breaking down the systems that our oppressors have made with a write-in campaign, right? So these mutual aid programs can bring us joy and care for us and support us like the systems that we don't have. Teresa, we always talk about how, some folks work within the system and some folks need to work without the system. I think that mutual aid is extremely necessary to work outside that system. But we talked about testimonies down in Salem. We can bring this type of framework and demand from our legislators. I was very privileged enough to speak directly to newly elected legislators last year in November. And I told them, I expect you to go even further. You have made so many promises, and that is incredible to see you trying to do that work, but I need you to go further. If you want to fund OHP, you need to go past just redirecting funds. You need to defund the Oregon State Police. And we've shown how many folks can raise our money through GoFundMe's. But the reality is we shouldn't have to do that for people's medical bills, for people to just have basic necessities. And we need to work without this system, outside of the system, to create these mutual aid programs that we have seen work. They work, and people are benefiting so much more, and we're raising our quality of living out here. But once we get set up, and we already are set up, we're in a new, longer legislative lobbying year this year. And so it's time to go down to Salem, testify, and bring that and demand that we see these systems now being set up, rather than just, hey, you have OHP, you need this. No, I'm going to tell you what I need with my OHP. Yeah. So I think mutual aid is joy and listening and constantly reminding ourselves that we should be evolving with the folks around us and listening to those people and stories.
I just wanted to touch on, GoFundMe versus Venmo. So basically, I love them all. I'm in support of them all, but with my own personal experiences and with others I've known, GoFundMe can get kind of dangerous because you have to adhere specifically to the exact writing of the GoFundMe itself. I actually, after I got arrested, somebody had made me a GoFundMe without my consent. And they wrote it weird, but people had already sent money to the GoFundMe. So I was like, okay, I don't want to have it be all dramatic and make two, etc. But I was homeless for months on end. And because of the wording of the GoFundMe, I actually couldn't use any of those resources to sustain myself living out of cheap motels or just gas or all of that. So personally, when I see somebody has a GoFundMe, I also want to check okay, do they have a Cash App or do they have a Venmo so they can use it more at their own discretion. But that's all I got to say about that.
Also, with that being said, Venmo and Cash App can be tricky as well, in what your description is on the transaction. So I would just say if you're gonna do a description through Venmo or Cash App, just put it as something else and not as a necessity bot or something like that, because it can be kind of used in a form that you need to file taxes. If it's a certain money going towards you, they can kind of frame it in that way. So just I would choose wisely what you say in the description, and from there, keep going. Yeah.
Joseph, I totally saw that Cash App was doing that and taking away people's money. Like, just literally, it was just gone and they couldn't get it back. And they said that they were violating rules. But I want to also bring up like petitioning websites. A lot of folks think that you can raise money on these petitioning websites, which I'm not sure if there are some that you can do, but we were using change.org for a petition and folks were like, oh, I just donated to you. Great, awesome. But it wasn't donated to us. Change makes it seem like you're donating to that organization or those folks, but you're not. You're donating to change.org, which is just ridiculous. You're making folks think that you are donating to folks who really need it, but instead you're just continuing to donate to folks who are profiting off of our pain and our suffering. And it's really gross to see people have their things taxed, like GoFundMe, because those folks are paying taxes to programs that are supposed to be helping us. And they're using GoFundMes because we don't have programs that support us, like healthcare. So many folks pay for their healthcare through that GoFundMe, and now they're going to have a chunk of that money taken away. And they desperately need that. But it's really important that we make sure that we are learning how to donate this money that is supposed to help folks without harming those folks in the same time. It's happening to a lot of sex workers because of FOSTA and SESTA, where Cash App and Venmo is just shutting down your accounts or making your money just completely go away. And it's, where did that money go? Did it go back to the people who sent it to me? And I've never heard it going back to the people sending it to me. So I really appreciate you, Tiana, for saying that. It's definitely stuff that we need to work on to figure out how to ensure that we're still supporting these mutual aid programs without harming folks, like I said.
I just wanted to say like a little note to any future mutual aid organizers that are listening right now. As far as like Venmo, Cash App, whatever way you're bringing cash in, it's always really important to keep receipts and to be really transparent, no matter what you're doing. And what that looks like, a lot of people think that that's being held accountable to anyone who asks, but really the only people who you're actually accountable to are your community and the community you're serving. So a lot of people will donate $5 to the Venmo for mutual aid and then be like, hey, where's all your money going? What's your budget? What's your funds? And it's usually some white lady who has nothing to do with it and just donated $5 and now feels like a white savior and entitlement to all of the work that you're doing. So while it is like so important to always just, you know, when you're doing mutual aid, like Teresa knows, like Jacinda knows, like you have to cross your T's and dot your I's twice because they're going to come for you super hard, like how they came for Black Panthers, like how they came for Tiana, like they're going to do that. So as long as you have everything in order, they can't touch you. Yeah. But that accountability really is only for like your own community and the ones you're serving. And then everything else is just like kind of white noise.
Outside of monetary contributions, it's important that we emphasize just bodies being there to support, because I know in the same ways of like that, those resources and that money being gone after people forget about what we're supporting, the same way that rooms are empty after a few months, like spaces that I've been in that would have been hundreds of people in June are now 10, 20 in March. So I think that's really important that people make the excuse or that you don't have the money to support, but it's not always about money. It's just being a body and being there to support people and causes.
I just want people to know that like there's more ways to get involved without like being out. Cause I know a lot of people are like worried about COVID and stuff. Like this was brought up before. Using your voice is like also amplifying Black women, like reposting a GoFundMe, a Cash App, that's using your voice as well. There's multiple ways to use your voice and there's multiple ways to provide without like, you know, coming out and not necessarily like using your like actually communicate on social media. And so there's really no excuse why a lot of people can't participate in the movement, or, you know, they well, obviously they choose not to, but yeah, that makes sense. But I think I get.
Thank you. And Danny?
Yeah, I would agree with that. You know, sometimes you can't always come out to a protest, but finding what you have the capacity to do, but also finding something that you enjoy, whether that's if you are a baker even, and you can, you know, like bake stuff and give it out, or you have supplies, or you're an artist, or there's all these different things that can be done, you know, sometimes just without showing up and, you know, protesting. And I think sometimes a lot of people will go, well, I can't show up, so I'm not going to do anything. But it's so easy to show up. I think sometimes people get discouraged by that.
Corey?
I'm gonna piggyback real quick and say, yes, the worst thing you can do is say that you can't go out, you can't show any support, but then you put a sign in your yard. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Like, you can do more than buy a sign. Please do not do that.
And if you got a sign out there and Black Lives really don't matter to you, please remove the sign, because we know.
Yeah, we know you ain't actually doing that in your daily life. So,
Corey, how do you use it?
Honestly, what Ty just said is exactly how I feel. I feel like I've said this a few times, but like the Instagram story infographics, like really, and I'm someone who like creates them, but like to see, like, especially in like a circle of like high school students, like you have everyone following you is following the person that just posted that 5 minutes ago. So it's like, why can we find some new information to share? Like, it seems like the act is just for the act of like showing that you have done something rather than actually doing something. And people don't put the effort into doing something, like to figuring out what they can do. And they think there's only donating and protesting. And that's really not the only options. Like, just like Danny said, you can bake, like you can create, everyone has something to offer. And I think that's just really important to me, especially like going through my personal journey of finding what I have to offer. And so I just hope everyone puts in the effort and the brain power and thought process to figure out what they can do and how they can contribute.
Absolutely.
And if you're gonna get like a yard sign, why don't you look up some local Black artists that are making their digital files free? Go to your local print shop, print out a bunch of those and put them all over your neighborhood. Like, go like spam your neighborhood with like support of like some free art and like raise awareness. You know, like there's so many things you can do. Like earlier she was saying our link tree. Like, we have so many different resources for like free downloads, free know your rights guides that you can send to anyone, print up. They're like small little, you know, to keep in your pocket when you go out with you. You know, information is free. Is what I always like to say.
When you see that free art, find that artist and cash app them.
Yeah, before you
tell your friends that you give the art to do the same thing. That way you can, you know, keep paying it back. Tiana, how do you see using your voice? How do you want to?
You gotta be loud. I mean, in my opinion, like, you have to be loud, you have to be bold, you're gonna piss a lot of people off, but that's really what's capturing their attention. And so that's kind of like the kickstarting, or like the ignition to a lot of what needs to happen. It's like, it's really lighting a fire up under somebody's ass, like, in my opinion. And call your legislators, call the DA, call anybody that you have, like city council especially, and tell them what you want from them. Tell them what your demands are. Like, you're like, our tax money is funding their professions, their career, political professions. So let them know what they are in office for.
I remember when you were protesting with us back in the day, that's when we used to get like the OIR reports from the Independent Police Review and handing out like federal documents and, you know, like basically telling everybody like, these people work for you. We have to demand and get on the record so that they'll, you know, follow up. And I think those protests caused a lot of the audits that we use now to kind of indict these figures, right? And these processes. So it always works to be in direct engagement. And like you said, be loud, document loud, share loud, show up loud. Joseph?
Yeah. So with that, using your voice, I want to kind of speak to the people who don't know how to organize or are like a part of like this kind of movement right here and like are kind of in the back. I would just say there's other ways to use your voice, like everybody said so far, but just like make sure you do your part and not just taking the easy way out by sharing something or posting something on your like yard, like you're saying. Just think of ways that you can do it, because there's a lot of things. We have nothing but time right now. Pandemic at home, you can sit down, you can kind of think. So I would just say really take a second and think about what you can do to help out.
Thank you so much. And Samuel, would you like to share with us how you use your voice or how you think people can use their voices?
Yeah, I think just really quickly, just jumping off what Joseph just said to keep the conversation flowing about like the aspect of knowing that there's a lot more that can be done. And from what everyone's saying, especially off of social media, I think especially when considering like Portland and looking at Portland specifically and the signs, I feel like Portland is a city of signs. Like I feel like the majority of the city right now supports a paternalism that has existed so long here. And I think that going and what Tiana was saying and really having like being hyper focused on the institutions and the county and the municipality level with like city officials and the local government and the structure here, because Portland is a city that has sold out. I mean, it's sold out to developers and it's sold out to this idea of like what a general sense of future can mean. And like especially on a national scale, I think that like underneath that, there's so many people here doing the work already to kind of dismantle those systems that exist, especially in Portland. So I think it's really important, like just to echo, like if there are tools and maybe you're not on social media and maybe that you don't know what community to connect with, I think Portland's done a great job of making it very easy to get back to what the status quo is. And I think that there are settings that it is possible to call those situations out. And it seems like what Tiana was saying, it has a ripple effect. So if there is that space and the leadership starts to shift and change, I think that's where it really, really could start. Because right now we still have that same system set up with the leadership in the city, looking at especially career politicians and like what politics represent. And we don't need to get into that because that's a whole different conversation. But I think, yeah, showing up for when people ask is huge, to use your voice, using your spirit, your artistic spirit. Maybe you're not speaking, but you're just showing up to, help, the collective and the movement. So.
Absolutely. And Jacinda?
Hey, thank you. So using your voice, I touched on this a lot yesterday, but I am a storyteller and a relational organizer. I think it's really important for us to share our stories and learn how to effectively share our stories and really communicating your shared value and your experiences. I'm a non-binary person sharing my reproductive health story, and a lot of people don't see themselves included in the RJ movement because it is really, the words are just about women and it feels that it's just cisgender women. But sharing my story, a lot of folks have come to me and, I even had somebody cry and say, hey, you made me feel really loved and comfortable and accepted, and I want to do this with you, and I finally feel like I can be a part of this community. And so I think it's really important to share that story. In addition to that, I had a story with the writing campaign. Barack touched on something that I dealt with money and accounting. And now I am 22 years old with a political action committee, went through an audit because people were, threatened by this movement. And first off, our group of teenagers and young organizers and whatnot, we had to basically like go through law books to figure this out. And so, for folks who can't donate or, they can donate their labor, as other folks said here, giving their time and their energy rather than, giving their money if they're not able to. Something that would have really, in retrospect, I should have done was made a post or a call to action asking for a lawyer or an accountant to just come in and give us a little bit of support. And, at the end of the day, we did find a really incredible lawyer who didn't charge us absurd amount of money, but we're talking about the legalities of just trying to survive and take care of our communities, and sharing those stories like Tiana did about GoFundMe's and whatnot, and being aware of how other folks like Tiana, that story has really made me feel energized to make sure that other folks know about that. Hearing everybody's stories today makes me personally feel energized. And I know the point of this panel is to share those stories and to get folks out there. And sharing our stories are educational experiences because there are lived experiences. Like, a lot of us here may have similar issues we've been through, living in a city where we're experiencing racism and classism and constantly just trying to survive day to day. And, before folks came out for the pandemic, right, it just felt that mutual aid was just on like Christmas Day or Thanksgiving Day. And in addition to that, a lot of folks had these connotations around charity, the word charity, and not wanting to accept that. I lived in a city in California where we didn't have mutual aid programs like this. We had just a ton of white people not doing anything. And, our rent was just an absurd amount of money. And we didn't have that. My family didn't have that support. And we were completely pushed out of our neighborhood. We moved across this country to St. Louis, Missouri. And when I got there, I felt like there were so many more folks willing to come together to support each other, because you'll have school buildings in Black neighborhoods that are just left and abandoned with chairs and books in there. But folks don't know that. So sharing those stories of, hey, literally there are these buildings that the city owns that are just falling apart that folks can be using as housing. So I think that it's really important for us to continue to share these stories that we've shared today, going past it. And I'll keep saying it again and again. But for instance, somebody was saying, like slacktivism and reposting, we want to get folks elected and we put a bunch of signs in our yards. And you say, hey, awesome, but why are you also voting for that person? And in addition, are you taking further actions? Were you knocking on doors? Were you talking to your neighbors? Because that's just all you have to do. We actually had letter writing campaigns for the writing campaign that people just went and dropped on people's doorsteps and said, hey, I'm your neighbor. This is really important to me. Here's my phone number. And in addition, here's my phone number so you don't have to call the police. You can call me first rather than putting yourself in harm's way. And sharing those stories it's an extremely powerful way to get people motivated and energized. And we can share so many more resources. Like, are you text banking? Are you phone banking? Are you canvassing? Are you just going to go talk to your neighbors? A lot of us don't know our neighbors. Just go drop a note on their door and say, hey, you're really important to me, and I want to make sure that, we avoid harm for everybody in our neighborhood. Here's my phone number. Hit me up if you need help. So just sharing those experiences, sharing your shared values, and making people feel like they actually are a part of our communities. When we bring in our own personalities and our own personal experiences, we don't just hear people talking to us about legislation, because like I said, that legal jargon is a huge barrier for everybody, especially like the voter pamphlets. It's so hard to hear that. But if I had a neighbor write me a note, put on my door, hey, I'm voting for this person, or hey, I'm testifying here, or hey, there's a mutual aid program here. I did that all in my apartment. There's hundreds of us in my apartment building. And I actually had folks come and volunteer in my apartment for the Not Black Friday mutual aid program. So I think it's just important to even just, your first step is talking to your neighbors. And, our brother-in-law, he had a baby during a pandemic. So right now I'm helping take care of his baby while I'm here. And so, I just talked to him and was like, hey, do you need support? And he was like, wow, awesome. Thank you so much. I really did. So just starting those conversations, acknowledging other people's experiences and sharing your story unapologetically, because this is your experience. This is your emotion, and you don't have to prove anything to anybody, because this is you, and you should feel empowered and not feel ashamed to share that story, because they're real and you matter.
I'll talk about something a little different than I did yesterday. Just like a quick thought was just never compromise your beliefs, your integrity for someone else's comfort. And I see that happening a lot in Portland. Like I remember even 5-10 years ago when I would talk about prison abolition and police abolition, and people would call me radical, communist, anarchist, just trying to discredit me because they hadn't, actually wanted to do the work to look at like the radical core, like the root of what these issues are. And I never did shut up. And now some of those same people are coming to me, were coming to me, especially in June, like, hey, any good reading resources on abolition? Hey, can we talk about police reform, police defunding the police, trying to come to me as a resource. And these were the same folks who had completely discredited me in the past. So that's one thought, is just, never compromise yourself for someone else's comfort. And in Portland, that's something that I see happening constantly, because it's not worth it a lot of the time to get into the argument, but you don't have to. You can just state your belief and move on. And then the other thing that I kind of touched on yesterday was just knowing when it's appropriate to use your voice, which, for instance, like in situations of abuse, when you need to advocate for yourself, when you need to advocate for another person, if you see someone being harmed, you always will use your voice. There's never a time when you should be quiet. If you see someone else needing help, you should always speak up. But also knowing when to make space for other folks who, like Black women, Black trans women, trans people in general, women in general, and Black folks in general. And knowing when to make that space is really important. And I think that empowers us when we are aware of those things, where we can better use our own voices. And it becomes a voice that can be used for advocating instead of just talking.
And I appreciate everything that everyone has said on here. And I just wanted to say this past year, when Portland continued protesting after 100 days and just continued and continued, people were like, wow, Portlanders are still protesting. And when I was asked about it because of the lawsuit and the interviews, I would say it's because we've had consistent education and consistent movement work happening outside of the tragedies. Like, we've made this social environment for change. And we're wanting that to continue with the younger generations. And it's not because Portland is better. It's not because Portland is progressive. It's really because Portland is so bad at treating people. It's on the record. It's inherently racist, which means that it's inherently violent. And it's such a violent, despicable situation that we find ourselves in, that we have to continue moving and pushing things forward. We have to continue showing up. We have to continue speaking out or using our voice or our platforms to kind of elevate these different issues. We have to continue determining and demanding and building mutual aid aspects in our community. And because tomorrow's platform is going to be about knowing your rights, we definitely need to know who we are in America and what our rights are in all processes, whether it's, learning how to, apply for an apartment and understanding the laws around how you're supposed to be treated as an applicant, or whether you have the right to free speech and you get arrested while protesting, or whether you're able to film the police during an arrest or something like that. We need to actually know what our rights are, because there's such an undermining in our values by the status quo, to where they would eliminate your assertion of your own humanity and how you move forward in societies. And so rather than let them make the demands on you to wait for progress, you have to continue to seek progress through action. And that's what a community action plan does for all of us. And I just want to thank you all again for your commitment to sharing this information with the broader community, and just in general with each other as we continue to build. Thank you so much for being here today. That's our shot today for this program. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.
Thank you.
Black Power, y'all.
Street on street, street on street, street
you guys having me. Thank you.